Hello everybody, welcome to this playthrough pitch. My name is Mason Clay, and today I'll be showing you the prototype I've been working on called Ridge Defenders. In this playthrough pitch I will be explaining the ideation process, how I came up with this idea. I will go over the development process, what I did, what challenges I faced, what testing I did, and what feedback I received to that will shape the development phase of the development of this game, as well as what I would do in the future if I was to make this a fully fledged game. So what is the game anyway? So the game is a top-down shooter mixed with a tower defense slash attacker, where the player will be constantly going back and forth between an enemy to capture towers here in order to have the ultimate goal of reaching the enemy base, whilst also make sure the enemy does not reach your own base. So how did I come up with this idea? So when I was thinking of ideas for a game like this, I basically looked at two different games. Mainly because there was a few, there was stuff like Andover Tower, Zombie Tower Defense. However, I mainly looked at games like League of Legends, mainly through the aspect of the tower objectives, how the player has to go and destroy towers and destroy the base in that game, whilst also having different side objectives as the jungle monsters to empower their character. I also looked at Helldivers, looking at the gunplay, the actual movement, as well as the vast customization the player has, as well as taking more little bits of objectives from like side objectives and main objectives and how it could benefit the player. So, what are some of the core mechanics for the game? Some of the core mechanics include stuff like basic movement, so the player can move along just by walking along with the mouse click, so you need to hit the ground. The player can shoot, and they'll be able to reload, and they have a little arrow counter down here. The player can capture towers in order to advance into the enemy base. See here, once this is done, the player will capture the tower. There's also basic AI movement, with the enemy being able to attack the player, and of course the player can fight back when needs be. And what I also just shown there was a ordnance sort of ability in which the player can activate. So for example this one, I can just activate it to run a bit faster, to reach locations faster, or to retreat. There's also small medkits here which are used to heal the player that will respawn on a constant basis. Not only that, there is also outposts here, which are solely the side objectives of the game, in which when the player captures them, they'll be able to increase their health. So now the health is now set to 110. And this is a very important feature of the game, as it will be one of the main ways the player will be empowered and be able to make the character stronger. As for the actual mechanical side, how I've been able to make it, for example, with the towers, I've made it so it's just that the when something overlaps, it will check whether it's the player or whether it's an enemy. In which case, it will check that the enemy or player is in the area. It will then run a series of checks, so such as is the player still in the area, is the enemy in the area, and does the side that is in the area control the tower. After that, a integer is used in order to calculate the value, so it goes up to increases the value by 1 every zero point 0.1 seconds. And once it hits 50, the tower will be considered controlled by whichever party was in. So for example here, if you wait 5 seconds in here, if the player waits 5 seconds in the tower, they will capture it and the material will change to show which side captures it. That same goes for the enemy as well. Outposts are the same, although they will just generally be setting the health values, and not only that, it also means that it also gives the enemies the capability to capture these outposts themselves in order to actually empower themselves, which gives another thing for the player to worry about and plan around. So for the unique selling points, for the unique selling points of this game, I want the player to have a vast amount of customization that they can choose from. So they can choose their weapons, they can choose their special ability, they can even choose some passive effects. So like, for example, in one case it could be that when you're near a tower that you control, you gain 10% damage reduction, or it could be that you capture towers faster. Another unique selling point is that there's going to be many different levels within the game with different ways to tackle them, so players can strategize and plan around which way they can take a level on and complete it. And there'll also be a progression system that rewards players for both playing the game normally and taking on levels and just clearing the main game, whilst also having special challenges for players who want to challenge themselves. So, like for example, a challenge could be beating a level in under a certain time limit, or taking as few towers as you can, or even using a specific setup. So over the course of development, I had several playtesting sessions to see what people thought of my game. This will allow me to look at where my game was at in terms of player feedback, as well as where I would go next. So from playtesting, what I learned is that people didn't think the AI movement was good, as it only really went towards the player and didn't actually go towards towers or to capture them. This is, I'll say right now, one of the weakest elements of my game that I never managed to fix. I never really got it to the point where I could get it so that enemies went to towers and captured them and then moved on after that. And it's one of the weakest elements of my game currently. But I'll keep going on about weakest elements later. A second complaint was that the level was boring. So the different levels I had, well, the level I had currently was boring. At the time, there was only like a zigzag here, so there was only really one path to and from the enemy base, which caused also conflicts with my design of wanting to have multiple different ways to attack a level. And of course, having it so it's only one way really limits the creativity players can have. So I decided to expand it a bit, so now there's new different routes that players can go down, as well as have to deal with to make sure that they're not getting captured, but also gives them the freedom to create new strategies that they can undertake. So for the strongest elements, I'd say the strongest element is definitely the towers and the outposts in a minute. I think they do well in with playing around each other, with the primary towers being, of course, the main focus on the game. You need to capture them in order to capture the enemy base. However, secondary objectives such as the outpost are also vital, as they will give boost to the player, and if the enemy captures them, they will also get boost. So they have to play around two things in order to make sure they are winning. As for the weakest elements, AI I've already mentioned. However, the second element I think is the weakest is the shooting, as currently there's just not really a way to aim. I also never managed to figure that out, and so the player will have to like turn around, which of course takes time in order to actually shoot. And not only that, it doesn't mean that, like, for example, if I want to shoot over here but keep moving over here, I would not be able to do that. So as for my next steps, apart from obviously fixing any issues and any bugs that may still be present, I would like to obviously have a more complex AI movement system in which they go from objective to objective, instead of just only hunting the player down. I would like to have more aiming capabilities for the player, so they can actually have more control over where they're shooting and moving. I would also like to actually implement the customization system into the game, as currently there's not really any of that. And so it does also limit creativity from the player. And lastly, I would like to create more levels for the game that challenge the players in new ways with new enemy types, and do possibly even environmental hazards that the player has to watch out for. But that also means that I would also be making easier levels, so like tutorial levels, to draw the player in, as currently there's not really a tutorial to help navigate the player towards the objective. Thank you for watching.